Q&A mic one, Q&A mic one, Q&A mic one, Q&A mic one.
Testing, testing. Why am I always so quiet on the mic? Oh, now I'm talking louder and it's like still barely picking up. Well, other people are like over here and they're like over here and they can hear me. But like, I think I don't know what kind of direction it is, but I think it's. Para siempre lo siento, este río de amor, una noche de estrellas.
Hey, how's it going?
Mi vida es brillante y camino adelante, encontraré mi.
End of the year, fly so fast.
Oh my god.
All at once, your life has passed.
Okay.
I'm hoping for
a little faster.
a second chance to finish well. I've done my time in
Got 4 minutes.
I really want a second chance. See the sky above. I want a second chance. And
Oh my god, this is. Can you give some water, please? Good morning. Good morning.
So I'm on a mic line back here. I have another light I can try if that's not working.
On the bending down. I'm trying to get one of those shipping tape roller and cutter thing that you just kind of like use for boxes. But for
Check 1
I'll see
2.
if I can
Check
make
check.
one for the floor.
So.
not even getting this picked up here. That's the problem. Yes. Well, yeah. That was what my hope was. It's like, please work.
Let me just open this up real quick and get this woken up.
Before I do that, eject, buddy. Should eject real fast.
All righty. Good morning, everybody. There's still some commotion in the back. That's what I'm waiting for. Are you all? Are we good to go? Okay. I'm getting the thumbs up, so I'm assuming that's where we go. Good morning. My name is Verena Kalhoff. I am a board member as well as VP of Ops for Houston Oasis. I am filling in for Will Judy today. He was our regularly scheduled MC, but he's heading up to Kansas City Oasis to visit with one of our sister chapters. As you probably are familiar with Oasis, there's an Oasis network that is across the country, across the globe. Well, we're global, but we don't yet have any global chapters, I think. But it is definitely, the Oasis network is there to support Oasis groups springing up in other cities across the country, across North America, South America, wherever. So if you know of anybody in a different locale that is interested in building something like this, feel free to reach out. We'll have the conversation and see, provide support with the whole structure of doing something like this. Houston Oasis has been around since 2012 as a community of individuals that agree that people are more important than beliefs, and reality is known through reason. We come to, and as well as the others. Meaning comes from making a difference. Human hands solve human problems, and be accepting and be accepted. Those tenets really struck a chord with me when I first started coming here. Sundays for talks, just getting to know each other and getting to spend some time with like-minded individuals. One thing, so today's program, we're going to hear a little bit of music from Nicole, Quinn, have a community moment by Emily Kremer, then do our regular coffee break before we listen to the main talk. One thing I should mention, on the bulletin, it says that we're doing Bring Your Own Lunch here today. We will not. Today is the first Sunday of the month. We do Bring Your Own Lunch on the second and fourth Sunday. All of us are. And so we will be doing lunch at Spicy Girl Sichuan Cuisine. I'll have the address for you all towards the end of the meeting. But let's go ahead and get us started with some music. Nicole, Quinn is a Houston musician. She lives in Boston and has been here all week performing and in the recording studio late at night recording some really exciting new stuff. And she'll tell us a little bit more about her work and let us listen to some fantastic music. Please welcome Nicole.
Yes, here we are. Good to be back. It's been a little while. So yeah, I came in on had a night in the studio. I'm working on something totally new, nothing like I've ever done before. You have all known me to be the acoustic singer, songwriter, songbird. So it's kind of industrial and ethereal, and it's really cool. I'm super excited about that. And I'm also finally getting my originals, my acoustic originals done professionally. And on May 16th, I am doing very beautiful, all of the makeup this year. If you want to see. sun broke through the trees. I didn't mean to say. I thought we'd come back to the light. Well, I guess that I'll keep singing your song in the night. Wow, I was really nervous for that one, you guys. So in this last year, I was diagnosed with a pretty serious disorder called Meniere's disease that affects my hearing. And if I can't hear, I can't sing. So I sobered up because that also affects the problem. And let me tell you what, standing up here in front of you guys on a Sunday morning, totally sober, I'm shaking a little bit. Okay. So this is my newest song. I've only played it once live. And I'm actually going to drop the key because it is early. I've done a lot of singing this weekend. Okay. This is called Graveyard of Broken Hearts. Oops, so sorry. One more time there.
buried mine about 100 times, and I paid my face with this fake pretty smile to hide my honest side and keep my face dry. My heart is running out of real estate. Every plot has a name tattooed, no room to make. And if you dig up each grave, you will surely find that every buried broken heart is actually mine. Graveyard of broken hearts. Yeah, it feels like I buried mine about 1,000 times, and I paint my face with this fake pretty smile to hide my honest eye and keep my face dry. And keep my face dry. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Nicole. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and Emily Kremer, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your last name okay? Okay, is going to be giving a community moment talking about just that.
So I made slides so that way no one would look at me and they would all look at the screen. And then it caused a lot of problems this morning when it wouldn't start right. So, No, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, so it's Child Abuse Prevention Month, and I just wanted to do a little presentation because it's related to my job, but I'm not speaking on behalf of my office because I didn't ask permission. So just know this is related to what I do, so I kind of know stuff. And I started my timer a little bit late. Okay, so I wanted to talk about prevention versus awareness, because a lot of times I sit through a lot of these presentations and people just tell you about the problem and they tell you about the individual repercussions of the problem, and all of that is very important, but I think it's also important to talk about the prevention aspect of it. So that's just what I wanted to do today. But I'm going to start with the problem first, and I wanted to give you some information about the scope of the problem, where we are. I'm going to use acronyms, so just real quick, the slide says DFPS on it. That stands for Department of Family and Protective Services. They're the governmental agency that's over CPS, which stands for Child Protective Services. So they're the ones that you think about when you're like, who do I call? CPS. Who takes children? CPS. Who works with families? CPS. So anyway, if I use those words, that's what I mean. Child maltreatment includes abuse and neglect, both. So I'm going to be talking kind of umbrella. So child abuse is what you probably normally think of, which is physical, sexual, and verbal abuse, whereas neglect is like neglectful supervision or maybe medical neglect, things like that, that hurt the child by not taking care of their basic needs. In Region 6 is Harris County, Greater Houston, and beyond, so it also has like Matagorda and Austin and Walker, so it's a bit bigger than us. And in that, and I know a lot of folks live out there, so I wanted to include these numbers. So last year, these are 2023, in our region, there were about 9,000 confirmed cases of child abuse or neglect. There were about 7,000 confirmed perpetrators, and 4,000 kids were taken out of their homes and either placed in foster care or some kind of substitute care, like kinship placement, where you're put maybe with a family member or a friend of the family. I also wanted to emphasize that the state does promote prevention programs. There were 3,300-ish families served through child abuse family services, such as parenting programs. They do a lot of other stuff, but that'd be parenting interventions. Thought I'd put my timer where I could see it. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this social ecological model for violence prevention because I think this is an important thing because this is what brings us all into the picture and treats it more than just an individual problem. So I think it's like a good thing for us when we look at our core values to know that we have a role in this too. Obviously, it is an individual problem between an individual caregiver and child, but it's more than that. So Tim told me that I didn't do a very good job. Tim, my spouse and treasurer, and personal IT guy, told me that I didn't do a good job explaining it, so I'm just going to read this part from the website. This comes for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. This model considers the complex interplay between individual, relationship, community, and societal factors. It allows us to understand the range of factors that put people at risk for violence or protect them from experiencing or perpetrating violence. The overlapping rings in the model illustrate factors at one level of influence, how they individual factors at one level influence factors at another level. Besides helping to clarify these factors, the model also suggests that in order to prevent violence, it's necessary to act across multiple levels of the model at the same time. This is a model that's not just about child abuse. This is also about interpersonal violence or domestic violence, community violence, basically one-on-one or one-on-a-couple level of violence. Also, I'm shaking because I have a tremor. I always shake, so if you're like, she's super nervous, it's just because I shake. Okay, so just real quick, what individual level might mean is maybe an individual has a history of abuse, maybe they have a substance use disorder, and prevention at that level might focus on building social, emotional learning or skill building. Relationships would be peers, partners, and family, and prevention would focus on mentoring or support groups. Community is school, workplaces, and neighborhoods, and prevention focuses on things like building safe community parks, addressing neighborhood crime. And societal is society. So that would be like places where maybe violence is normalized, but also things like social and economic inequality. Prevention at that level would focus on increasing financial security, improving educational outcomes, and all of those pieces. So there's also risk factors and protective factors for child abuse and neglect. So this is where we kind of narrow down to the child maltreatment portion and not just violence in general. I wanted to look at this because this, I think, is the place where we can really get involved. So again, this is an individual problem, but there's a lot of levels to it. And risk and protective factors are not like predictive, it's not causal, it's correlational. This is a public health model, so we're kind of looking at a big picture. If we reduce these things, we reduce child abuse and maltreatment at a societal level. Okay, so examples of individual risk factors would be, in case you can't read it, drug and alcohol issues, so caregivers who were abused or neglected as children, caregivers who themselves are experiencing stress, maybe they're going through a period of unemployment, things like that. Family risk factors would be household members in jail or prison, families experiencing intimate partner violence, or families with high conflict. A community level risk factor would be high rates of violent crime, food insecurity, and things like that. Protective factors at that level are at individual are things like practicing nurturing parenting, parents who meet children's basic needs, and people with safe relationships with their children, safe and caring. A family one would be a strong social support network, caregivers who have support from other family members, maybe intergenerational support, and caregivers who are present and interested in their children's lives. At community level, it's things like daycare, early Head Start, access to medical and mental health programs. So things like those all protect families. It creates stable families, stable homes, which contributes to positive family relationships. Okay. Oops, did I exit it or what? What happened to my slide? Okay, so I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to look at it as part of a shared responsibility that we all have a part in. This is my personal opinion here. I think if we think of child maltreatment as an individual problem, it kind of makes it so we can't do anything, but it also lets us off the hook. So if all we think is the only way to work with this is like if I personally intervene on behalf of one child and one caregiver, so I see something happen and I step in, I call CPS, something like that, That's the only way, if I only look at it as an individual problem, that I myself can do anything. Whereas if I look at it as part of this model, I have so many levels where I can do something. I can interact at that level, but I can also suggest someone take a parenting class if they're just struggling. Maybe nothing's happening yet, and I can just recommend that they go to a parenting class and step in that way. At the community level, I can do things like what we already do to build safe communities. So we could do homeless outreach, food bank, clean up a park. All of those things contribute to less stress in the family. So by doing those things, we're also contributing to an environment where families aren't experiencing stress and they can have positive relationships. And then at the societal level, that one's tough because I'm just me, but I can do things like vote for political candidates who I know are going to address things like social and economic inequality. When I say no, I mean they say they're going to do it. But anyway, I can vote for candidates who say they're going to do that. I can also do things like get out the vote. I can do all of those things that, while I can't do it as an individual, can promote it in society. So I guess what I really wanted to say is, like, this is all of us. It's not just one person. And I think that we should treat it as an issue that we can all address rather than kind of pushing it off. 1 minute, 40 seconds. Okay, so this is my last slide. It's just links because a lot of times people give stats or whatever and you can't figure out where to go. And since you don't have a piece of paper, you can't look it up later. So the first one is the link for the Department of Family and Protective Services data book. So all those numbers I gave you, if you wanted to go back and look for them, you can find them. If you want to look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention one, that's the next one. So if you want to pull up that model, it's there. And then the last one is just how you would promote or report child abuse to the state. So if you wanted to do any of those things, you can go there. You can also just talk to me, and just a PSA. Oh, I have 2 PSAs. One of them is if you ever want help finding data on Houston or Texas or the world, you can come to me and I can help you find data sets because I do that. But just about people stuff, not about like other stuff. And then the other thing is my family is probably going to text or call me, and I'm going to remember to put my phone on silent for our speaker. That's my other PSA. So that's all I wanted to share with everybody. Thanks.
That was a great community moment. Thank you so much, Emily. Is there a web resource outside of CPS and all the others where if somebody was just looking for a parenting class to recommend to someone else, where would they go? Okay, so the place I do work has a lot of parenting classes, and you can go to parentinghelp.org, actually, if you wanted to find parenting classes in our neighborhood. You can also go to 211, which is the United Way's website, and you can find tons of resources there. So if you can't remember parentinghelp.org, if you just Google 211, you can find all kinds of resources in the community, and they'll direct you to parenting programs, too. Thank you so much. Very pertinent, very important, and actionable information. So we are about to go into the coffee break, but before we do, I just wanted to mention one other thing. We will be trying out a couple of different formats for our morning gathering. One of them is going to be in a couple of weeks about Awe and Wonder. Tim Sledge is organizing that, and he is looking if there's for a couple more volunteers who have like a, I don't know, 30, 45 second thing about what they are in awe and wonder about. You know, something like for me, it would be, oh my goodness, the complexity and yet simplicity of genetics and how it manifests in different traits. Something like that. Could be scientific, could be very non-scientific. Feel free, Tim's not here today, so feel free to let me know or send an email to speak@houstonoasis.org. And we'll make sure that you get in contact with Tim. So now we have 10 minutes sharp for our coffee break. Thank you all.
I've seen horror stories getting back to work.
Okay, the CPU's calmed down, so whatever was going on earlier is done. It was at 99% of the CPU.
Wow. Some trails are happy ones, others are blue. It's the way you ride that trail.
We're just going to
that
make a
counts.
quick, have Jake
Here's
do a
a
quick
happy
announcement as well,
one
and then,
for you.
Happy trails to you until we meet
all righty, everyone.
again.
Happy trail.
Let's get started with the second half of our morning gathering. One thing that's been suggested that we haven't implemented yet, but we just got a great opportunity to do so, is to hear from you all about the last week, whether there are any, anything you would love to announce to the community, whether it's an anniversary, a birthday, a major achievement, or whether there's something you're struggling with and you'd like help with. And so I think there's at least one person today who wanted to share something with the community. And Jake, do you want the microphone, or you want to just? Can you tell me? Okay, sure. Jake Atchison, one of our board members, he sits in the back there, wants to let you all know and celebrate with us that he has passed the National Counseling exam and is on his way to become a licensed counselor. So congratulations. He passed the exam with flying colors, so this is awesome. Before we move on, is there anybody else who has anything they would like to say? No? Okay, well then. Let's move on to today's main talk. Evan Stewart is an assistant professor of sociology at UMass Boston. He discusses whether secular and religious people are pursuing selfish goals instead of sticking with traditional centers of community well-being. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you all. Good morning, Oasis. I'm excited to be here with all of you. I want to give a big shout out to all the Oasis board members and staff who have been setting up this event. An extra special thank you to Jennifer for opening her home to me over the past few days, to the bridge team. It was great to watch and learn. Someday I will understand how to bid in bridge, I promise. Big thank you to Jacob for the wonderful dinner. Congratulations again on the certification. My name is Evan Stewart. I am an assistant professor of sociology at University of Massachusetts, Boston, where I do research on the things that bring diverse groups of people together and the things that break diverse groups of people apart. Oasis contacted me to speak today, and I'd like to share with you some research I've been working on for the broader public. Tentatively titled, Secular Spiritual Something Else, the Political Potential of Religious Pluralism. Much to the annoyance of my colleagues in higher ed and academia, I love wordplay. I love alliteration, I love portmanteaus, I love playing with words. It gets me into trouble when I have to write my formal research articles. But Jennifer suggested that I start with a story, and I think I've got a good one for all of you. Speaking of wordplay, when was the last time you felt fun comfortable? Fun comfortable, right? Uncomfortable, but it's kind of dope, right? You're into whatever is happening, right? Last time that happened to me, I was driving into the woods of Kalamazoo, Michigan to visit an institute. This is the first thing I saw as I drove in, right? A black obelisk in the middle of the roads. Now, I grew up in Western Michigan. I grew up in Holland, Michigan. You don't see architecture like this in the Kalamazoo woods or the Western Michigan woods. So I was driving in to visit this organization deep in the woods called the Fetzer Institute. John Fetzer was a Western Michigan radio mogul. He made his fortune in radio. He was a former Seventh-day Adventist, former owner of the Detroit Tigers, and as he got older, he dumped nearly his entire fortune into this organization called the Fetzer Foundation. Now it's called the Fetzer Institute. The Fetzer Institute tasks themselves with building the spiritual foundation for a loving world. Their headquarters is a triangular building. It's triangular, I believe, according to the tour, because local zoning laws wouldn't let them build a pyramid. Its location alongside this idyllic lake deep in the woods was carefully selected with the assistance of a water medium. Crystals are allegedly buried in secret locations around the property. They're locations known only to John Fetzer, who has now since passed, and select board members of the institution to balance the energy of the space. And this organization had funded the survey that I had used to publish, at the time, my latest and sort of biggest academic article. So they walked us in. I was with a bunch of people for part of a research meeting. They sat us down in a beautiful conference center, and they lit a candle in the middle of the center. And they had us all breathe together, and they brought us together in community. And the first thought that went through my head was, oh, what have I done? Why did I cash that check, Evan? This is not the scene. This isn't your scene, right? Because I had spent the last few years of my life studying secular communities and being in connection with secular communities. I did not go in for these kinds of activities, right? I am the person most likely to scoff when things like this go on. I mean, there are obelisks, man. There are obelisks. There's Egyptian motifs everywhere, right? So our tour guide, completely unprompted by any question from our group, was taking us around the grounds and said, by the way, we get this question a lot. Nobody had asked this question. We're not a cult. Right? I was like, okay, all right. So I was thoroughly fun comfortable. I decided that for a moment I was going to turn off Evan brain, and I was going to turn on my other brain, which is sociologist brain, which was like, all right, we're just going to roll with this. We're going to roll with this. We're going to see what happens for a few days, right? And we're going to see what we can learn from this organization. So the reason I was there was because of two trends in American society. You have most likely heard of these trends. I don't think they would surprise you as members of the Houston Oasis community, but just in case, right? The number of Americans who identify as no religion in particular has grown dramatically in the United States. In the 1970s, it was only about 7% of people who would tell us on a survey, given a choice, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, that they have no religious identification. Right? Since then, that number has gone up sharply. Now, in the latest surveys, depending on how they ask the question, nearly a third of Americans will tell us that they have no religious affiliation. So dramatic change over time. At the same time, the same survey asks people, do you think of yourself as a religious person, or do you think of yourself as a spiritual person? Right? And over time, the people who self-identify as some kind of religious have declined in the same way at about the same rate. But what's held steady is the proportion of people who identify as spiritual today. Now, according to different surveys, depending on how they ask the question, between 70 and 80% of Americans will tell us that they identify as some kind of spiritual, or they believe in some kind of higher power. Now, most of the time, when researchers focus on these groups, they'll usually focus on one or the other. They'll focus on the secular Americans, they'll focus on the spiritual Americans, they'll ask different questions about each. My work is starting to look at them together, to ask what can we learn by comparing these two trends and understanding how they come together in Americans' minds. And I think this is an important question because there's an underlying assumption that's been kicking around in both the research literature and in common life, in the media. And that is the idea of the secular, the spiritual, the selfish, right? So you may have heard of a piece of research that broke into public life. It got out of academic containment, right? It entered the mainstream media around 2000. Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. In Putnam's Bowling Alone, he argued that Americans were stepping away from community life, stepping away from common institutions of community life, going to church less often, being involved in volunteer groups less often, and the core image here was the idea that people would be bowling alone instead of bowling in community leagues and organizations together. That idea, very popular, stuck around today, and people started to react to it. And people are still reacting to it. This is a piece from The Atlantic last week, the true cost of the church-going bust, right? How are Americans navigating community life if they are no longer involved in church or their bowling leagues or their volunteer organizations? Conservative media cares deeply about this, about the breakdown in community life and the family and volunteering. Progressive media cares a lot about this and the breakdown of community ties and commitments and solidarity to each other. And the libertarians, for some reason, care about this. I don't know why. And the American Prospect cares about this, and everybody is very worried about... Okay, so we are very uneasy about the decline in American community. We hear about it a lot. We are anxious about how we maintain community ties. And organizations like Houston Oasis play a very important role in helping us intentionally revisit, right, how we build those connections with each other and whether or not they're serving us. Okay? The theory is that religious organizations, church organizations, institutions, power up civic life, right? And they do that by giving people a shared sense of identity and belonging and community. They do that by helping people coordinate their ideology. To use the language of political science, they help us coordinate our belief systems about all kinds of things, who we want to vote for, what policies we want to support, what we believe. And religion also helps to power up civic life through institutions. The classic example, the bake sale, right? The idea that we have problems we want to solve as neighbors and community members. The way we're going to solve those problems is by getting together, developing a novel solution, fundraising, donating baked goods. We'll work together to get it done. The research literature has long argued that religious institutions are particularly good at doing these things, right? They're pretty good at doing this for democracy. And so people are rightfully anxious about the decline in religion. Fewer people are going to church. If fewer people are involved in organizations like Oasis, are we perhaps losing a sense of democracy? Are we losing important routes to civic engagement? So this led me and my colleagues to ask what was actually going on. And this idea gets out into the media. This is from last year. Russell Moore, head of the Southern Baptist Convention previously, I believe, maybe, left my notes off there, said there's a desire for spirituality that often comes with a suspicion of institutions, which can develop itself into all kinds of super individualized enterprises. The idea that people pursuing spirituality, pursuing alternative religion, leaving religion altogether, are withdrawing from community life, right? So in conversation with that, we asked what's actually happening. And for the past few years, I've been working in my own research and in my collaborative research with people to test this theory of selfish spirituality, to ask, are secular folks disengaged from community life in the way we think they are? So it turns out that if you get a hold of validated voter turnout data, actual voter data on who voted matched to people's survey records, with proper controls, methods aside, I find that atheists and agnostics turn out to vote at pretty much the same rate as religiously unaffiliated people. They vote just as often. There is a bit of a dip among people who identify as nothing in particular. You can see this lighter bar here dip down a little bit, dip down a little bit. Voter turnout is lower among people who self-identify as nothing in particular. But this group is also younger. Young people tend not to vote as often, right? This group has a lot of other things sort of putting downward pressure on their voter turnout, making them, yes, distinct, but making the gap between secular voters and religious voters much smaller than a lot of the literature thinks and a lot of the media says. Right? So I published that piece. Then a colleague of mine got together and asked, is the same thing happening for spiritual people? And we found this survey, paid for by the Fetzer Institute, with all the obelisks and the crystals and the candles. They fielded a big nationally representative survey that asked folks, during the past 12 months, have you done any of the following or not? This included attending a meeting to talk about political or social concerns, calling, writing, giving money, joining a protest, signing a petition, all kinds of things, all kinds of civic activities. And we asked, are the spiritual folks doing these at lower rates than religious practitioners? We found not that. We found that spiritual practitioners were about 30% more likely to report doing at least one political activity in the past year. Marginal increase, but statistically significant. We also found that devoted religious practitioners were also about 30% more likely to report one of these political behaviors. So what we were able to find is that this spirituality wasn't about disengagement from community life. Spiritual practitioners were just as involved as their religious practitioners. So one of the issues we have in the survey is that it asked about all kinds of different things you could do. I could not fit all of the activities on one single slide. They include prayer, yoga, meditation, studying text, doing tarot, making art, being in nature, writing, honoring or communicating with ancestors, all kinds of different things that everyday people do as part of their spiritual practices, their meaningful practices for themselves. And one of the issues I've been running into in my own research is that these items give us information about two different things. How often do you do stuff? And how many things do you do? What is the variety of activities in which you're engaged, not just the frequency? So when I go and I look in the survey data at these two types of information, they give us different information about people's practices. It turns out that religious pluralism or spiritual pluralism, doing many different things, right, is higher in different demographic groups. Right? So highly educated people tend to do a greater variety of things. People in other religious affiliations tend to do a higher variety of things. People who identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual as opposed to heterosexual on a survey question tend to have a higher variety of activities. And that's different from doing activities frequently, doing them often. Right? It's not about how much you do the activity, it's about the variety you do. So when I can measure that pluralism, we find something really interesting in the survey data. And something that I think is really important, and I think it's something that people here at Oasis understand intuitively, that more people need to know about. We do find that frequency, practicing often, is associated with higher counts of civic activities and higher reported intention to vote. Those folks are more engaged. This is the bake sale coming back. People who are more deeply involved in their organizations tend to be more civically engaged. But the interesting thing is that the pluralism also matters. People who do a wider variety of activities in terms of spiritual practice, individual practice, are more likely to start doing civic activities and to start doing voting versus doing nothing. This is unique. This is different. This we haven't quite seen as much. I call this the calendaring effect, right? The people who tend to do a lot of activities know how to manage a calendar. If you've ever worked scheduling your kid's soccer practice or scheduling time to come to Oasis, right? If you've ever juggled multiple scheduling conflicts, you know how important that is for getting an organization together and getting people involved and keeping them involved. We also know, for example, interfaith groups in the United States are growing more slowly than other religious groups in the United States, right? So the institutional infrastructure to support that pluralism practice isn't quite there yet. But secular groups, like the Houston Oasis, they're not on here. Because the IRS is so inconsistent in the way it labels them, I still am in the data having to hand label and hand group all of these organizations to compare them to the Christian groups, the interfaith groups, the spiritual groups, the Buddhist groups, etc. So we are still building the institutions that can support that kind of pluralistic engagement in public life. But the story is not about disengagement, right? Secular, spiritual, something else? What's the story actually about? I argue that the rise in religious disaffiliation and the sustained popularity of spirituality are not just about disengagement from public life. These are the first big meaningful increases in religious pluralism we have seen in the United States in the last 50 years or so. They really started taking off around 1990, and our measures of religious diversity and pluralism have taken off as well. Because we're not just talking about diversity, we're talking about pluralism, more encountered diversity, right? The diversity you run into in your everyday life, differences in your friends, your neighbors, your community colleagues, interfaith relationships, secular political advocacy, doing get out the vote campaigns or advocating for certain policies. We see more spiritual practices in secular organizations, If your workplace has led a meditation retreat, you know what I'm talking about. If your workplace has done different kinds of mental health engagement and training, you might know what I'm talking about. We also see nuns, religiously unaffiliated people, with a wide range of unique beliefs and behaviors, some that are religious, right? Some that are deeply spiritual. But there's more variety there that we haven't quite tapped and we haven't quite measured yet. And what we're finding is that now it's not just the bake sale effect. It's not just the people who are in church who are doing the bake sale, and then the voter campaign, and then the volunteering. Right? Now, there's the calendaring effect. So it's also the people who are doing a variety of kinds of community engagement. Community engagement we have not yet been able to measure as researchers. Right? We're moving from the bowling alone metaphor to the popularity of pickleball. Plenty of people are doing pickleball. This is the fastest growing sport in the United States, but we don't have data on it. Right? People are selecting into a wider range of different community activities, and we're not giving them credit for it as researchers because we can't measure it. Right? So, this is the meeting room at the Fetzer Institute. There's the candle, right? So, after a few days at the Fetzer Institute, I was thoroughly fun, comfortable the entire time, I assure you. The meditation room was beautiful, had a 7-foot crystal. Everything they do with extreme intention. Intentionality was the word I heard the most. Right? They are very intentional in asking themselves, why are we doing each thing we are doing? Right? Why is it a part of our community practice together? How are we going to start our meetings? How are we going to sit? This symbolizes something. I don't remember what it symbolizes. This symbolizes something. Everything in this room has a symbolic thing. The triangular building, mind, body, spirit. Right? They have a system. Right? The food was delicious, I have to tell you. And their staff, they're a nonprofit organization, their staff get paid time during the week to focus on their own personal spiritual development and contemplation, whatever that means to them. Whether that's a religious practice, a spiritual practice, philosophical reflection, something more secular, they get paid to do it, right? And so I left really, they said, Evan, you really picked up on the energy of the place. You seem to really get what we're doing. Friends, I don't think I did. I was still widely fun, comfortable, right? That's the sociology brain talking, right? But I do know that my training as a sociologist kicked in to watch how that intentionality fostered a deeper sense of commitment in this organization. Something that you don't necessarily have to do religious practice or spiritual practice to do, but something that the variety of practices instilled in people, right? That attention to the intention of those practices. Pluralism means experiencing differences, right? In identities, it offers us more ways to enter civic life. In ideology, it requires dialogue. It requires compromise. It requires that discomfort and that argumentation as we come to a common understanding. And pluralist institutions must serve diverse communities, right? And so I close with this idea. I think that pluralism is something we can all stand to pay a little more attention to understand our everyday lives, to understand our communities, to strengthen them. Because that's core, deep, foundational American values. Right? In the Federalist Papers, they argue, if you extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests, pluralism, right, you make it less probable that a majority will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. Right? That pluralism, that fighting, that arguing, that productive fighting, right? Not disrespectful fighting, not, really contentious fighting, but that good controversy, right? It makes organizations inefficient. It can be very frustrating at times. It is inefficient to go through all that fighting. And then we all leave, we go home at the end of the day, and we still have a functioning democracy. Right? And we still have functioning democracy in our institutions together. Right? So what I'm currently working on, and the message I hope I can bring to you, that you can bring to your communities, is that there's good reason to believe that we are not as disengaged as everybody says. And one of the core reasons is because I think communities like this are more willing to entertain the pluralism that it actually requires to live effectively in a democratic society together. So thank you very much for your time. Happy to talk with you after the meeting. My name is Evan Stewart. My website's up there if you would like to engage. Thank you very much. Yeah, time for questions, great.
Yeah, perfect. All right. While I'm breaking down everything in the room, are there any questions? Oh, good.
I think I saw a hand in the back there. Yeah.
And a nice, succinct question would be wonderful.
Morning, I really enjoyed your talk. Just FYI, as a Texan, my favorite part of the country, and I'm not just saying it's yours, I mean it, my favorite part of the country, not named Texas in the United States, is the northeast of New England, particularly during the fall, particularly Salem, Massachusetts, and Halloween. I've been there twice. It's awesome.
Love Salem.
And I've been to Boston Toll 3 times. But on a more serious note, and if you don't think this question has any, really is that relevant to what you're talking about, that's I'm cool with that if you don't feel like answering it.
Sure.
But obviously we had to take some measures with the pandemic, but there obviously objectively was a lot of collateral damage associated with moving from in-person experiences online. I know we've moved past that, but the American workplace, a lot of people are still wanting to work from home. And with that, it seems like to me, you lack that in-person, I guess, what's the word? In-person collaboration.
Yeah.
Having fun in the break room and stuff like that, not going lunch together. I just want to know if you can comment on how the shift to, in the workplace, but in areas, a shift to either hybrid or doing stuff behind the computer screen has affected a sense of community.
That's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. I have two thoughts on this. One is my personal opinion. I got to give that disclaimer first. And then my opinion as a sociologist, right? My personal opinion is that I'm really struggling with the pivot to hybrid and remote work. I see all of the benefits of it. I know how that flexibility really helps people. It certainly helps me. But I'm really struggling with finding that kind of connection to my coworkers through a Zoom screen. I'm really struggling with finding the mentoring connections with students that I need through a Zoom screen. I taught Zoom in the pandemic. It did not go well. You know, I did my best. We were all doing our best. But so personally, I struggle with it. As a sociologist, I would say one thing we can all stand to pay a little more attention to is that intentionality to figuring out our own social norms and organizations around Zoom. Because what I think is happening is most folks found like a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams and they just kind of plopped it down and used it as a substitute. You sit in front of your Zoom screen, you talk to people, you have your meeting, you log off, you go away. Oftentimes social psychologists say you feel really tired after that. Has anybody had Zoom fatigue, right? You feel really tired after that because your brain's processing the social information differently and it's exhausting. Right? The interaction norms are different. You're trying to get more information from this, right? And you can see as a person who does this a lot, not working, right? So I think one of the challenges we have is sitting down and really saying, what are we using Zoom for? Like start from first principles. What are we using Zoom for? What do we need to get done? And what about the Zoom meeting must be different from an in-person meeting, right? Maybe it's time limits, maybe it's different kind of introductory style, maybe you're not gonna kid yourself about being able to introduce everybody, I don't know. But really paying attention to how you're gonna structure your Zoom meeting and planning it out can help to resolve some of that issues. That's what's worked really well for me. Yeah.
I am hard of hearing, and so maybe you've covered this,
Sure.
but you know, it's been my observation, and I think it's supported, that religious groups tend to, if you will, groupthink. They are told what to think. Whereas secular groups, we tend to think, you know, there's, in this room alone, there's a whole variety of thinking, and we kind of accept each other. Have you discussed or researched how to penetrate groupthink? Is that on your table, or are you aware of that being on a table anywhere in sociology?
Oh yeah, great question, thank you. So we think a lot about groupthink as sociologists. There's a long history of research that's focused on mass movements, mass changes in groupthink, mass hysteria. There's great sociology on collective moments of moral panics, like the Satanic Panic. There's great social science on that. One of the things about groupthink in an organization, right? One of the things I was most surprised by when I trained to be a sociologist of religion is that people who are religious are much more varied and inconsistent in their beliefs than an outsider would think. I was stunned to see in the survey data the remarkable variety of beliefs among religious people. There is groupthink that comes from being in a very strong organization, right? Absolutely true. But also congregations have conflicts all the time. They may not be about a fundamental theological point, but they're about everyday things like, how are we going to get more members? Or how are we going to be a fulfilling organization for people? Or are we going to do activism or not? Congregations fight about that a lot. And so there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from congregations about how to manage those disagreements between people. But I do think, to your point, my hunch that I could test maybe one day is that secular organizations that are already thinking about how to welcome people with a wide variety of ideas have a bit of a head start there in terms of how to develop that community and how to think through conflict together. Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you.
To go ahead and move on with the program. Thank
Great.
you
Thank
so
you very
much,
much.
Evan.
Thank you,
Really
everyone.
great talk. So we're gonna listen to a couple more songs in a minute here. So if Nicole, if you want to go ahead and get set up, I'm just bridging that gap. As I mentioned earlier today, lunch will be at Spicy Girl Szechuan. It's about 4 minutes drive from here on 917 Winburn Street, just down the road. And then there's a few more announcements we'll do after the music of volunteer opportunities. Secular Week of Action is coming up in the end of April, so there's a number of opportunities there and a few other things that I wanted to mention as well. So let's hear a couple more songs from Nicole.
Check out, there we are. Okay. So I've actually played this here before, but songs tend to take many forms. They get written and rewritten, and yeah, it's weird because I've rewritten it recently, so I'm playing it a lot more now than I ever have live. But when I wrote this, it was back when I was playing on 6th Street and a lot and traveling for gigs, and there's a lot of alcohol involved. It's kind of like built into the design is that the more alcohol that's sold, the more money you make for while you're playing. So naturally, you know, you get a lot of drinks bought for you, and then you're hanging out and you drink afterwards, and you wake up and you drink the beer that's sitting on the side of the table. So it's weird, I'm not even really in that headspace anymore, but the song somehow has come to life again, so it's a little bit different. So here we go, this is called That Time of Night. They're calling last call, I'm thinking about leaving. I'll be wide awake, everybody's sleeping. They say that I'll get no rest for my wicked ways. Hours feel longer when the moon is shining, minutes turn into tiny little lifetimes, looking for trouble, so I don't have to stop and think.
sun will wash my sins away, and I'll sleep through another day. Come back to life when the club doors open, in that stage, getting lost in the music, taking shots from the crowd. You take this lonely heart away. Every sip on my lips, sweet anesthetic. This wall I'm hiding under, secret aesthetic. We both know that the curtain falls at the end of the day, and I don't want to sleep tonight, 'cause it's that time of the night when the wrong things feel alright, and if I make it to the morning, the sun will wash my sins away. I'll sleep through another day. This one-man show is hanging on a thread of all those things I wish I never did. But it's that time of the night when the wrong things feel alright, and if I make it to the morning, the sun will wash my sins away, and I'll sleep through another day. And if I make it to the morning, the sun will wash my sins away, and I'll sleep through another day. Thank you. So I normally play my job, my full-time job. The covers is my own little passion project, but my main job is I travel around and play cover shows, and that's what pays the bills. So I don't get to play my own stuff very often, but since I've been recording lately, things are coming back up, and I'd forgotten about this one for a long time, but it's going on the album, so. This is a breakup song because I write a lot of those. Okay. Where am I? Sit down, let me ask you something. Do you have real expectations? Will these patterns make any difference? Or is this just an insane existence? It's not you, it's me. I know you've heard it before. Does that make it easy to walk on out that door? I'll take responsibility if it saves your dignity. It's not you, it's me. I'm trying to decipher this fucked up code you're writing. Whoops. Will these patterns make any difference? Or is this just an insane existence? Not you, it's me. I know you've heard it before. Does that make it easy to walk on out that door? I'll take responsibility if it saves your dignity. Not you, it's me. You said you needed just one reason to say why. But baby, you know there's no reverse. singing there. It's not you, it's me. I know you've heard it before. Does that make it easy to walk on out that door? I'll take responsibility if it saves your dignity. Not you, it's me. I'm the one who's crazy. Baby, it's not you, it's me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Nicole. That was fantastic. And I'm sure we'll hear about your new CD whenever it's ready to.
Check, there we are. You definitely will. I mean, I guess if anything's allowed here, it's pretty rowdy.
All
But
right.
I'm really excited about it. So, you know, if you're open to like, you know, experimental music, it might be your jam.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much again, Nicole. Next week we'll have Brightwire perform as our musical guest. They've played a number of times for us. Our main talk is going to be on the urgency of self-compassion by Samantha Hernandez. She is a self-love advocate, former social enterprise founder, spent about 10 years in trauma care for survivors of human trafficking, where she developed a social enterprise creating over 7,000 employment hours. Whatever that. She is incredible in helping folks understand more about themselves, being at peace with themselves. And she'll be here. It'll be a little bit different than our typical community moment main talk format. Yes, we will have a coffee break. It will be a little bit more interactive. We're actually going to start off with Samantha talking about the urgency of self-compassion. We'll go into more of an interactive period, coffee break, and then close with actually a short reflection rather than a community moment by Perla Moreno. She will be talking about her experience with this subject. There'll be Q&A time, etc. So really looking forward. It's a little bit of a different format, but I think it'll really resonate with this community. And if not, please do let us know. Let us know either way, if you really love it, if you don't. What we're doing here, what the programming committee tries to do, is find ways to engage the entire community, to bring us closer together as individuals within this community and make Houston Oasis your home away from, home, well, your home, your community. One thing that I wanted to mention, first of all, Kevin, thank you so much for kind of going between setting everything up. Our volunteers really make things happen here. Without them, without everybody showing up here early, we would not be able to have a wonderful, fantastic experience on Sunday mornings. In addition to that, you all being here is really what makes this community a community. But we also have some financial obligations that come along with this. We're paying for the room, we're paying for the musicians and some of the speakers. Overall, the programming does require some additional resources. So if you're able to and interested, and there is a QR code at the back of the bulletin. Feel free to send some contributions. We are a 501c3 organization, so it is tax deductible. We also have a hat in the back. Drop in a check or cash. Would love that as well as. But of course, always having you here on Sunday mornings is really important. There are a number of members who are either already in the path of totality or are on their way to the path of totality. There are some who are, they'll be back, they'll tell us all about it. However, Lou just mentioned earlier today that apparently the Sugarland Museum of Science is also hosting an eclipse event tomorrow. They're not typically open on Mondays, but if anybody didn't actually get around to booking is available tomorrow, that might be a really good event to go to. They have some additional activities, etc. So even if it's overcast here, you'll probably get something really great out of it. So just wanted to mention that. And then we have a number of upcoming events, some that are listed in the bulletin already for the next week. Blues Night is going to be on Thursday, April 11th. Houston Oasis cards. I guess, see Jennifer? Okay, so there will not be any card games, but do check in and. Oh, okay. So then the bicycle ride is going to be on. Okay, so what is Saturday? I have it in here, Saturday, April 13th and Saturday, April 14th. One is the card games and one is the bicycle ride. I think it's probably both the 13th. So next week, Saturday, there's a few things happening. To put it on your radar, Houston Oasis Book Club is coming up by the end of the month. The book is Papillon by Henri Charrière. A page turner, supposedly, according to what's in here. Do please let Ginger or Ted, there's an email address, theodore@houstonoasis.org, to be added to the mailing list to find out where they're going to be on that. And then there's, of course, the Secular Week of Action that is going to be coming up in the end of this month. We will be volunteering at the Houston Food Bank. We will be volunteering for the homeless outreach and a few other things. I saw a few emails coming through yesterday or earlier this week. So please do put your human hands to good use and help us solve human problems. With that, lunch, we got lunch. You all know Spicy Girl, Szechuan, just down the street.
Talk about the parking. Is parking in the garage available at Spicy Girl?
Do you know about that? Because I don't know anything about it. How, does anybody know about the parking situation? Mid-main loft parking. Okay, and okay, very good. So bring your ticket, park in the mid-main loft parking garage, and get that validated. Anything else I'm forgetting? If speak up now or forever hold your peace. It's going to be probably about 2.5, 3 weeks from today. There was an email that came through from, what's that website again? Huh? Yeah, Meetup. Yes, these events were just posted to our Meetup page. It's the Saturday before I guess it's like the 27th or something? 23rd? Yeah, so if you are on our Meetup page, go look there. If you aren't yet, I can show you how to get there, or somebody, I see some action there. We're getting you the information. It will also be likely linked up on our Facebook group. If you're not on the private Facebook page yet, let us know. We'll get you into that as well. Okay, there's a sign up at the desk. Okay, well that makes it. Okay, very good. That's it for today. Thank you all so much for coming. Great to see you all, and go have a fantastic rest of your day.